Welcome. I am the Solomonster, and this is episode 36 of RSPW Rewind, where we look back at the classics from 20, 25, 30 years ago. Going back in time to see what the so-called smart wrestling fans were talking about, debating about, long before Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram even existed. It's been a while since we've had one of these. By popular demand, everybody loves RSPW. So it's time to dip back into the vault and see what everybody was talking about. Most of all, I get to show you that wrestling fans complaining about stars being shoved down their throat, complaining about people being buried on TV. This is not something that is unique to the social media generation, as you will see here. So let's dive right in. We begin. I've culled together a bunch of posts spread out over the course of many years, and we're going to start way back with a house show report from Christopher Palacios from May 17th, 1993. Crispy's house show review from May 15th, 1993, Austin, Texas. That is the title of the post. I love this kind of stuff, going back almost 30 years. The only times you would really see stuff like this, house show reports and whatnot from that far back, was in the Observer, or maybe the Torch. But a lot of people don't know about this mysterious place, this magical, mystical place called RSPW that did exist for people who did have computer access back then. Another WWF house show hit the Irwin Center last Saturday, and once again I had second row ringside seats. Being a Saturday night, I expected a bigger crowd than the last house show, which was on a weeknight. However, I would estimate the crowd to be around 3,500, not much more than their last visit. Things started going downhill when Mike McGurk announced that Mr. Perfect was a no-show. However, she did mention who would be replacing him, Marty Jannetty. And off we crawled. El Matador, Tito Santana versus Blake Beverly. Boy, we're getting started hot here. You can imagine how action-packed this one was. I'm detecting some sarcasm here from Mr. Palacios. Arm drags and arm bars galore. Blake takes the pink ponytail holder out of Tito's hair and puts it on his ponytail. Nothing exciting, and Tito takes his pink ponytail holder back in what seemed like a never-ending match. Dud. He gets a dud rating. We move on. Papa Shango against Tug Taylor. Who? That's what we said. When McGurk announced Tug Taylor, I thought she made a mistake and was supposed to say Typhoon. But no, some big guy with no talent and TT on his boots, and many a dinner in his belly, popped into the ring. I believe the Tug Taylor that he's referring to was Tugboat Taylor, not to be confused with Tugboat from the WWF. Booker T worked some shows for him back in his days as G.I. Bro. Shango dominates and wins with a power slam that made the ring shake for a minute. Much better than the goofy-looking Santana finisher, El Paso de Muerte, or as RSPW affectionately calls it, El Fist del Head. Dud number 2. We then get to The Undertaker, one-on-one against the Giant Gonzalez. This is where I start to shake my head in amazement. He says, the main event is the third match of the evening. Well, you can guess what kind of scientific WrestleFest this was. We noticed that El Gonzalez wore Nike Air basketball shoes with a leather covering over them to make them look like wrestling boots. Reaction of the night from Harvey Whippleman when Gonzalez is getting beat on by The Undertaker. I yell out, hey Bruno, get in there and do something, and he tries to hold back laughter. Undertaker by DQ when the Giant hits him with the urn. Harvey gave hell to some redneck who was either very drunk or a big-time mark. Go use some mouthwash, redneck, was a popular comment for this guy. Dud number 3. 3 duds in a row to open this show. Not off to a great start. And then we get to Shawn Michaels, one-on-one, against Marty Jannetty for the Intercontinental title. The other half of the main event before intermission. "Oh well, if we can't have perfect, Jannetty will do." By the way, this was 2 days before Jannetty made his surprise return on Monday Night Raw at the Manhattan Center and won the Intercontinental title from Shawn Michaels. This was 48 hours before that. Michaels comes into the ring, flirts with McGurk a bit. Mike begins to announce his opponent, weighing in at 240 pounds. Here is... And while Michaels mouths Mr. Perfect, Mike says, "Marty Jannetty." And the crowd pops pretty big for Marty, second behind Undertaker so far. They put on a great match, with Michaels taking his usual crazy bumps. After selling a punch, Shawn spits and his gum flies out. Michaels goes outside to recover, and when he comes back in, he picks up the gum and starts chewing it again. Ugh, he says. Ugh indeed. Great action. But the match ended the exact same way as their last visit when Marty misses a charge to the corner, falls, and Shawn pins him with his feet on the ropes. Still a very solid match. He gave it 2 3/4 stars. Then we hit the intermission. And he says a solid quarter of the crowd leaves because their favorites have finished for the night. Some others have actually thought the entire show was over. I begin to wonder myself. Terry Taylor against Owen Hart was the second to last match on this show. Not much wrestling in this one. Owen was not over with the crowd. A pretty dull match with almost no wrestling. Owen wins when he tries to kick Taylor. Taylor catches the leg and Owen uses his other leg to kick Terry in the head. Dud number 4. Not very often you'll hear that Owen Hart had a dud, but according to Mr. Palacios, this was a dud. And finally, Doink against Crush was the main event. And he included no notes about it, presumably because he fell asleep. Well, that sounds like a pretty lame house show. I can't imagine why business was so bad back in '93. A few weeks later, on June 6th, 1993, we have another house show report. This one with breaking news, which is why I'm using it here. Breaking news from Jason Moy, titled, "Jannetty drops the IC strap." Just got back from a house show at Knickerbocker Arena in Albany, New York. Big news, Marty Jannetty loses his belt to Shawn Michaels on a pin. Shawn is introduced with his bodyguard, who happens to be Vinny Vegas. No name is announced for him, though. He is just mentioned as being led to the ring by his boyfriend, or bodyguard. Excuse me, slip of the tongue. I'm sure there was a lot of that going on back then. The match lasts about 10 to 15 minutes. Good work rate. And some nice choreography when Jannetty goes against the ropes and Vegas hits him from behind. Danny Davis does not see this. Michaels goes for the cover and gets it. One note, a lot of photographers at ringside. So I would not be surprised to see it mentioned on Raw tomorrow evening. Other matches, Owen Hart pinned Terry Taylor. Boring, he says. Papa Shango pinned Jim Powers, who is a substitute for Typhoon. Luna pinned Sherry when Bam Bam comes out and interferes. Bam Bam is DQ'd for putting a chair to Tatanka's back. Hogan and Beefcake win via DQ over Money Inc. when Hogan uses the briefcase on Rotunda, and Sergeant Slaughter does not see it. Sarge was doing some refereeing at the time on the house shows. Then Slaughter uses the briefcase on both Irwin and DiBiase. Not a bad card, but the highlight was the strap change. And I remember that too. And if I remember, I don't think they showed any actual footage on Raw. I think they may have had still shots of what had happened, because I don't remember ever seeing actual video of the title change when Michaels beat Jannetty to get the belt back. But the significance, of course, is that that was the night that Diesel, although not yet under that name, made his WWF debut, and so we had RSPW apparently getting the news before anybody else did. We skip ahead to January 2nd, 1996. A post by Peter the Great titled Billionaire Ted's Wrasslin' War Room. So this was the day after a very historically notable episode of Raw, which featured the one and only Raw Bowl, where they decorated the ring like a football field and everybody came out in jerseys and helmets and they had the black shit under their eyes and everything. The announcement was on that show of Vader coming to the WWF. He would be in the Royal Rumble. But also, in the closing minutes of that show, we got our first Billionaire Ted skit. And so here's the post. I was quite surprised at the way they ended Raw tonight in a new generation ad called Billionaire Ted's Wrasslin' War Room. In a huge knock on Ted Turner, they show some guy dressed up as Turner, fake mustache, gap in teeth and everything, asking his two main wrestlers if they can do any of the great moves the superstars in the WWF do. Like the Razor's Edge, the Jackknife, the Tiger Slam. Tiger Slam. Two old farts hysterically dressed as the Huckster and the Nacho Man say, of course we can't, we're too old. The ending voiceover claims the new WWF generation is king of the hill, not over it. Says, I'll admit I'm a huge WCW mark, but I was really rolling on the floor laughing. Vince has apparently abandoned his moral high ground, well, he abandoned that a long time ago, and really hit the WCW and Ted Turner below the belt, and done it with the WWF's typical fantastic production quality and fine writing. Boy, you know this is a really old post when this person's talking about the fine quality writing of the World Wrestling Federation. You can say it's about time Vince did something about all of the cheap shots that Eric Bischoff serves up every week. That's what separated Vince from Eric. Eric had to pump himself and WCW up by knocking Vince and the WWF. McMahon did not have to. The WWF was the king, the leader. Well, tonight Vince McMahon acknowledged the WWF is no longer the leader. Nitro is beating Raw in the ratings week after week. All in all, it was a pretty hysterical promo, but I hope all of this competition between the WWF and WCW will lead to a better product, better wrestling, and maybe 2 nights a week of live wrestling. And as Eric Bischoff reminds us, ratings talk, bullshit walks. Well, if anybody would know anything about bullshit, it's Eric Bischoff. Mark Davenport replies, I thought it was stupid on Vince's part for making fun of the two guys that made him rich and made the WWF popular. It is Vince's fault that Hogan and Savage are doing what they are doing today. He created them, so Vince is pretty much biting the hand that fed him. Vince created them, and it seems a little hypocritical now for him to be knocking them. Basically, the reason Vince pulls this new generation crap is he knows he has no big names anymore and is trying to find an excuse for this. Also, if WWF brings back the Ultimate Warrior, which they did end up doing, how would he fit into their new generation? Warrior isn't young anymore. Seems to me that Vince would love to get anyone back that has a big name but doesn't have the money to do it, so he makes fun of guys that made him rich, and I will bet anything if he could have them back, he would do it in a heartbeat. Chris says, I think it's high time that McMahon shot back at Bischoff for what he has been doing, but by stooping to his level, Vince has made a tactical error, in my opinion. I enjoyed seeing Vince go on about WCW, but I also saw that after Vince started his pot shots, Eric got this shit-eating grin on his face and started calling Stanford Fantasyland. It's obvious that Eric is the ultimate reactionary. Seeing Vince go down to his level only makes him happier. And finally, Rick Powell chimes in, speaking some truth. What will happen when WCW's old wrestlers retire? A loss of Hogan, Macho Man, Flair, etc. will leave them up Schitt's Creek without a paddle. While the WWF still has Michaels, Ahmed Johnson, if he wasn't pushed so much, he would be more enjoyable. Owen Hart, Brett still has a few good years left. Davey Boy Smith, and lots of others that would keep the WWF running for many more years because they are smart enough to try out new talent. Well, Rick was not totally wrong there, was he? That one of WCW's greatest downfalls was their inability to create new stars. They only had a few. And maybe if they had taken the road of trying to create new stars, used some of their existing ones to help build them, kind of like what Macho Man did for DDP, maybe WCW wouldn't have gone down as quickly as they did. Also on January 2nd, 1996, we have a post by Mark Bureau about the war of words between the WWF and WCW coming off all the Billionaire Ted stuff. He said, let's see. ECW bashes both the WWF and WCW for all of 1995, gets a great pop from RSPW. Vince does his Ted's War Room and gets a great pop from RSPW. Medusa trashes the WWF belt, and Bischoff gives away a pre-taped ending to the Raw Bowl, and WCW gets trashed by RSPW. Just out of curiosity, what's the difference? Remember when Nitro started, the consensus of RSPW said that the real winners are going to be the fans, because we will actually see great wrestling. Now with Vince's great rebuttal, what can we look forward to? Each taking pot shots, says pot shots, I guess is what he means, at the other federation, and the wrestling going downhill. I really hope this was a one-time thing on Vince's part, because if not, things can only get worse. As funny as this skit was, it showed me that Vince is nothing but a liar. Can anyone really believe a word he says on AOL now? I don't think you can believe a word Vince says on or off AOL. Although I do remember that very infamous AOL chat that he had many years ago. Actually, he had more than one. Mark continues, as low class as Bischoff and McMichael come across, all they have really done is make claims to being the best. But Vince went so far as to attack the personalities of several people. I am not going to rant about how Hogan and Savage made the business, because I really can't stand Hogan or Savage, but Vince got personal with workers in the business that is much, much lower than giving away the endings of pre-tape matches that are presently being aired. I hope this is not the beginning of what the fans are in store for. Jason Weiland says, if McMahon and Bischoff spent as much time improving the wrestling of both promotions and less time bashing each other, I think we would see a couple of good promotions. Michael Rogers, I disagree about the wrestling going downhill. Nitro, while it may have disappointed those who have a variation of the Hogan mentality that says the Four Horsemen should never lose a match, it was still better than a lot of the WCW pay-per-views that occurred earlier in the year. I wasn't thrilled with the Raw Bowl, but I will concede that it was different, yet still revolved around wrestling, unlike a certain monster truck fiasco from the competition. While it may be hit and miss, I would still contend that most wrestling fans look forward to Monday nights. Well, they used to. I also posted elsewhere that I thought the piece was very funny. Sense of humor seems to be in short supply around RSPW these days. It's starting to remind me of the people you run into working in a video store or a music store. They poo-poo all the popular music or movies and pride themselves in being into the stuff that most people don't enjoy. It is elitist bullshit. I will venture to guess that the ad was enjoyed by most people who saw it. If it gives them a chuckle, that means goodwill for the WWF, which Vince hopes translates into money in his pocket. Is that true, by the way? Anybody who has worked at a video store or a music store can chime in and let me know. There are a lot of elitist snobs who work in these places. Lieber 2003 was a little ornery with his response. Most wrestling fans do look forward to Mondays because they are tight-fisted cheapskates who don't want to pay for anything. Then again, when you pump gas for a living, you can't afford to spend what you do not have. I love these people who say how great WCW is and how bad the WWF sucks. Monster trucks and dead giants. There is enough bullshit to go around everywhere. Of course, to these dickhead WCW marks who drink Bischoff's urine, anything their Eric does is good, and anything the mean old WWF does is just bad. Now, I picked that post for a reason. What does that post remind you of? Because it was the first thing that struck me when I read that. You could just substitute WCW and Bischoff in that post for AEW and Tony Khan. I see it all the time. I see Facebook threads, I see tweets, I get messages all the time from the E-drones. So think, 20 years, 21 years, actually this is more than 20 years ago. I mean, times may change, but do they really? The more things change, I really do believe the more they stay the same. All you're doing is just swapping out the names and the faces. It's all the same shit. Jeff Hardy was Steve Austin's guest on the most recent episode of the Broken Skull Sessions on the WWE Network. And they talked about Jeff's ladder match against The Undertaker for the undisputed title from Raw back in 2002. That was on July 1st, 2002. And it was on that date that Danger 3210 posted this. RSPW, should Jeff Hardy win the title tonight? In the words of my 14-year-old nephew, I just can't see Jeff Hardy as the champion. It's true. I myself cannot see Jeff as the world champion, but should he still win the title? I mean, would it be all that bad to have a champion that's going to bump like crazy and work his ass off 100 times harder than most of the main eventers that have had the title billions of times? I can't remember the last world title change where there was a supreme underdog that won the title out of nowhere, and this could also make a star out of Hardy as well, and maybe re-spark Matt's heel turn. In my opinion, Hardy winning the title would not be all that bad, and I'm not even a real Jeff Hardy mark. He says I would much rather have Van Dam or Benoit win, but Hardy winning would be the surprise moment of the year. And how about this prediction here from Stephen Morlock? Bitter, fat, and hateful since 1984. That's what it says in his signature. Getting the title off Undertaker ASAP would be nice, but Jeff's a really bad choice as the champion. Tonight the match should be good, with Jeff bumping like crazy but still never giving up, but finally doing the job in the end. It will put both of them over at the same time, and Undertaker should help up Hardy post-match to speed up his eventual face turn. When Taker does job, it needs to be to either Angle or RVD. And that is exactly what happened when the match was over, and it was very surprising because Undertaker was still a heel. He helped up Jeff Hardy in a show of respect. He paid him a great deal of respect by doing that at the end of that match. So quite the prediction there from Mr. Who was that? Mr. Morlock. I was going to say Warlock. That would be cooler. We had Warlocks on RSPW back in the day. June 26th, 2000. The morning after the 2000 King of the Ring pay-per-view where The Rock won back the WWF title in a 6-man tag team match. A rare pay-per-view miss for the company in a year where I thought that that was probably, I regard that as their best year, quality-wise, for pay-per-views. King of the Ring 2000 was not on that list. The Big Crapper coming in hot here with a post titled, I want everybody at RSPW to admit one thing. What is that one thing? Well, let's find out. The Rock deserves the WWF title and a long title reign. Did he deserve to win it at WrestleMania? Yes. I'm not saying he deserves as many title reigns as he's had or should have won it tonight, but he does deserve to win the title. As much as RSPW hates him and his relatively low work rate, some stupid comments are made here. I think I just read one. Sports entertainment has little to do with work rate, and Rock is the present king of sports entertainment. But I hear people making it sound like Rock should be fired from wrestling since he doesn't even belong in a ring. I can agree with these Rock haters in terms of work rate, but remember one thing, a man's job is to get people to watch and come to see wrestling. And The Rock is doing the best job right now of doing that. Therefore, he deserves the belt. Here at RSPW, we are in the mindless WWF lemmings. We talk about belt credibility. Remember when that was a thing? And many of us would like to see Triple H against Benoit main events until 2001. I would like to hear people say Rock deserves the belt for what he has done. After all, work rate isn't everything. According to RSPW, it's the only thing. So give The Rock his props. So the Big Crapper taking a crap on all of the Rock haters. Evidently, The Rock was not as beloved 21 years ago on RSPW as he is today. Stewart responds and says, no, he doesn't deserve to win the title and have a long reign. CJ Moss has even stronger words. He doesn't deserve crap. He's been the most overpushed person in modern wrestling, period. He got his first world title 2 years after debuting in the WWF, and only 2.5 years after starting to wrestle. He got his first major title barely a year after he started wrestling. Austin busted his balls, Michaels busted his balls, Hart busted his balls. Fucking shit, he says even Hogan busted his balls for a few years before winning his first world title. Flair busted his balls, Jarrett, like him or not, has busted his balls. A lot of ball busting going on here. My balls are starting to ache. Triple H has busted his goddamn balls, not as much as others mentioned, but at least he works hard. Rock has had everything handed to him on a silver platter. He doesn't deserve jack shit. 3 months after his debut, his ass was still not over with the blue chipper gimmick. So what do? They shove him down our throats by giving him the Intercontinental title. The only damn reason he lost that title was because he had to go out for knee surgery. He comes back and joins the Nation of Domination, and the fans boo. Not because he's a good heel, but because they were genuinely sick of him. Along the way, Rock grabs some mic skills, and I like how he grabs mic skills. It's like you're walking into Walmart, and they're up on the shelf over there. We got some mic skills that are on sale. 2 for 1. So Rock grabs some mic skills. He starts showing charisma. Slowly, he shows improvement in the ring. Hell, in early to mid-98, he was gold on the mic and good in the ring. In late 98, he got lazy on the mic and in the ring. He got carried in matches against Foley, and for some reason or another clicked with Austin, got shoved down our throats more, won 5 WWF titles that he never deserved, and thank God has not held anything for longer than a month. This subject just bugs me. And Adam Short shot back at one Triple H hater in the thread. These threads, by the way, in a lot of cases, I mean comments upon comments, I'm not going to sit here and read them all. But Adam Short shot back at one Triple H hater in the thread with this. This was in response to them asking, how can he justify the 15 months? The 15 months of the Triple H's God heel push. Here's what Adam says. It's made for good TV and good business. Are you really this much of a diehard Rock lover and Triple H hater that you can't admit that Triple H's push has done a lot more good than harm? Clearly, we had not gotten into the 2002 years yet. He doesn't get bad heel heat like Bossman, for example. He has a high work ethic in the ring and out. He comes up with more good one-liners than The Rock has good catchphrases. He's put on at least a couple of Match of the Year caliber matches already this year. He's had a part in getting over talent lower on the card. Why can't you give the guy a shred of credit just because he's not The Rock? I'll grant The Rock is not as bad as most of us are making out, but at this point in time, in terms of entertainment value, Triple H is ahead of The Rock in all categories. If The Rock could get back to the standards of ring work and character he showed in 98 and 99, I'm sure none of us would complain much. But right now, you've got a red-hot Triple H and a lazy shadow of his former self in The Rock. Which one would you honestly rather see? If you say The Rock, then it is a sure sign that you have taken your little internet gimmick too far, or else your markdom knows no bounds. See, me, I like to give Rock and Triple H equal credit. When Austin went down with the neck injury in 2000, those two guys carried that company on their back. I mean, Rock was the babyface taking over for Austin, but Triple H, he put the work in. He elevated his game, no pun intended. He had great matches, so I can't pick one over the other. They were both equally important to the company. You know, for every hero, you need an anti-hero. You need a villain. One doesn't really work without the other. Hogan, you know, back in the mid-'80s in WWF WrestleMania time, that don't work without there being a Roddy Piper as the foil for him to play off of. That was Rock and Triple H in 2000. But boy, it's like everybody picked a side here, kind of like they do today. You're on this team or you're on that team. You're on Team Rock or you're on Team Triple H. I hadn't realized the level of hate that The Rock had, the level of heat that this man had on RSPW back in the day. So I did some digging, and I found 2 more posts that touch on it, and then we'll end with these. First, this brief gem from the Great One, and the fucking irony of this name, from February 19th, 2000, titled The Rock's Huge Ego Ruining and Running the WWF. Why couldn't he put Benoit over clean like Hogan did for Goldberg? I can't wait until he gets fat like all them other Samoans. It quickly devolves from there into a Facebook thread, and this is 4 years before Facebook was even created. Sabu424 with Kimono Wanalea responds. It's a long name. But Sabu424 with Kimono Wanalaya says, Benoit sucks. You racist pig. Benoit should be jobbing to Gangrel. TASS chimes in, racist pig, for pointing out that Samoans are fat. Pointing out the obvious does not a racist make. Relax and don't be such a PC Nazi. I'm more offended that the first poster thinks that Hogan did the clean job for Goldberg. When it was Kurt Hennig coming down to the ring and being on the receiving end of a diamond cutter from Karl Malone that distracted Hogan. It distracted. Hogan had his back turned, and then he ended up walking right into a spear and a jackhammer. I don't know how clean that really was. And March 15th, 2002, we have a post by Chris titled, Why Does Everyone Here Hate The Rock? Just curious why everyone here hates The Rock so much. I've heard many people on this board describe him as having zero work rate and an extremely limited moveset, all punches. Is this the consensus here, or does it just appear that way because of an outspoken few? I've always thought The Rock to be a very good to excellent worker. Granted, he won't be giving Benoit a run for his money anytime soon, but he's certainly better in my opinion than most give him credit for. He's had a longer string of good pay-per-view matches than anyone in the WWF, including Austin and Triple H. Heck, even his last match with Undertaker wasn't as bad as most feared. For that matter, he had the best match at Survivor Series 2000 with Rikishi as an opponent. He bumped for 10 men in that match and told one of the better injured rib stories that I've seen in a while. Also, he's had better matches with Kurt Angle than Triple H ever did. His recent series with Jericho represented one of the better feuds in some time. I think it's a little naive to say The Rock has been carried to 4-star matches by all those people. Sure, a bad wrestler can be carried once in a while, but every single pay-per-view? This guy has got to be good. The feud with Jericho also brings up another good point. He jobbed to Y2J in all 3 of their pay-per-view meetings. I would think that that unselfishness alone would make him popular with the internet crowd. Finally, I just want to address the people when they say that he sucks due to his finisher, the people's elbow, because it is so pathetic. Who cares, he says. It's not his finisher anymore. Hasn't been for some time. The rock bottom is. As a finisher, the rock bottom is convincing enough to be a believable end to a match. The Rock hardly ever hits the people's elbow. Someone always pulls down the ropes, let alone wins with it. If you have a problem with the rock bottom, fine, but don't knock him because of the elbow. Ted B512 responds, well, I think his moveset is extremely limited. What gets me, though, is his absolute and total lack of match transitions. I have to say, this is a criticism of The Rock I've never heard before. So he says he has a total lack of match transitions. He doesn't even make an effort anymore to make a given match flow naturally. And it is frustrating. I can't invest myself in a Rock match because I know that any moment now he can start the crowd-induced no-sell and suddenly the match dynamic changes for no reason. I think that's incredibly poor technique for a guy who is in such a prominent position. I think this guy hasn't seen John Cena yet as a main eventer in the mid to late 2000s. I think the guy always gives it his all physically, but I rarely dig his matches. Nature Boy 72 with the sarcasm, Rock and Austin both suck. I just can't figure out how they're having good to great matches just about every pay-per-view for the past 2 to 4 years and frequently on TV. Yeah, I can't figure it out either. The guy sucks so much, but he just goes out there and keeps having these great matches. I mean, it must just be a coincidence. And Super Stud says it's RSPW code. If he can work a good to great match, has really good mic skills, and used to be a really awesome heel, but is now a babyface, RSPW hates him. You know, Rock's new Netflix movie, that Red Notice movie I saw, set all kinds of records on Netflix. The guy is the highest paid movie star in the world, but I do wonder when I read stuff like this, if The Rock ever lies in bed at night wondering, man, you know, if I had just improved my work rate, then maybe, just maybe RSPW would have liked me a little bit more. Maybe he wakes up in like a cold sweat sometimes, has to go have some milk and cookies or something and just gazes out the window and just wonders these things. Maybe that's why he keeps such a busy schedule in Hollywood. Maybe that's why he's the hardest working man in Hollywood. And he's so damn busy all the time. He's trying to make up. He's trying to make up for all the to all the lack of work rate he was criticized for by the RSPW crowd. Anyway, that's episode 36. Hit that thumbs up. Do consider becoming a channel member if you are not already. Members get videos like this first before anybody else. And leave a comment down below. Let me know what other topics, what other subjects, if I can find them. It's like searching for gold at this point. We're running out of threads here to find, but let me know what other topics you want me to search for in the archives for future installments of RSPW Rewind. I've got my own list with a bunch of posts left, but it's starting to run low here. So chime in and let me know what you guys want to hear about. And thank you, as always, for the support. Until next time, when we go back in the vault. Take care, guys.